Real Agriculture's coverage of Agritechnica 2019 is brought to you by Brevant. Seed, yield, easy. Shaun Haney here with Real Agriculture. We're at Agritechnica 2019 in Hanover, Germany, brought to you by Brevant. And right now we're with Tom Wolf. Tom, great to see you, man.
Hey, great to see you. We ran into each other twice just by accident at this show.
Twice by accident and once on purpose. Yes. That's right. Okay, your first time here, impressions?
I blew a gasket on day one, basically. I couldn't believe it, how big this place is. I had no concept. I knew it was big. I didn't know it was this big. Yeah. I mean, I crossing across the compound from one hall, which is gigantic, to another equally gigantic halls, you go past 20 equally gigantic halls, and it takes you 20 minutes. Yeah. So it's bigger than you can actually imagine. Plus, they accommodate most parking. I mean, they have huge parking lots too. I thought Germany was compact.
We're definitely in a compact car. Okay, so there's a couple different halls that are pretty much dedicated to nozzles and sprayers. Some of the brands, of course, you've heard of, or at least I have heard of, and I'm sure you have too. But some of the brands where I'm like, what? They're in the sprayer business. Didn't know it. So what was your impression and takeaway as you walked through some of those sprayer areas?
You know, those guys that's my tribe, you know, so I know who they are and what they're doing and what they got, the major nozzle manufacturers, but there were a lot of surprises. So the nozzle manufacturers are actually trying to play catch up. I mean, there is the pulse width modulation revolution that's already happening in North America, has been happening for a long time, is not happening here. And part of the reason it isn't happening here is because the nozzle manufacturers haven't actually developed suitable low drift nozzles that work with pulse width modulation. And Europe has, as you know, strict environmental laws, and they require that a PWM nozzle have a certain low drift certification. So they're playing catch up. So there actually weren't those products, and they should have been here, but they weren't there. So I have to go there and remind them, hey, shouldn't you be doing this? So that was a bit of a surprise.
So why have they not been developing the low drift nozzles?
Because they didn't take PWM seriously. They didn't think it was going to happen so fast and be so important.
So does that give some of the North American nozzle manufacturers a leg up here in Europe potentially?
Possibly, but we're all in the same boat. A lot of the nozzles we use in North America are actually from Europe, and the portfolio is relatively small. But you know, I don't want to poo on their effort. I mean, they make great products, but it's just that there's a real differentiation here of they're going to nozzle switching to accommodate turn compensation and travel speed changes and so on and so forth, and we're doing it with PWM. And I think PWM is the more elegant way to do it. And it also has a stronger future because you can integrate it well into spot spraying and detection and those kinds of things that are up and coming issues. And they insist on using air induction tips because they're better low drift. But we can make low drift tips that are not air induced as well. We just need to. We haven't been doing it.
Clearly, the pull type sprayer is not dead, because there is pull type sprayers all over the place here. And when I say pull type, I don't mean small pull type. There is some big suckers. I saw one that's 50 meters wide today.
Well, you know, I spent some time in the Daman booth this morning and talked to them about their sprayers, and they make probably the largest sprayers I've ever seen. A small Dutch family firm makes a sprayer that has a tank volume of 16,000 liters. And they just make them on demand. You know, how big would you like your tank to be? I'd like it to be 16,000 liters. Sure.
It's like you're ordering a pizza.
Yes, sort of, you know. And Daman makes these huge things, and they have double and triple axle sprayers. And that's just astounding. You know, the amount of iron we saw at this show is just like unbelievable.
And I know you didn't make it there, but Lemken even debuted their own self-propelled sprayer this week.
You know, I walked past them, but I thought, well, I've seen so many sprayers. I'm sorry, my brain's full.
I need to remove some things before I can put any more in.
I hope Lemken doesn't. I hope I didn't hurt their feelings.
Well, I sat in it. It was pretty cool. Yeah. So there's that. And the Brazilian company that makes Strada. Yeah, they saw. We stopped there today too. That was fun.
They're cool. They got the mid-mounted boom, and you know it's not a new thing. And they have a fertilizer or seed dispersal tank as well, so they can't do any of this simultaneously, but they can do it sequentially in the same tracks, seeding a cover crop or spreading fertilizer. Kind of a neat concept. I'd love it to see it being done simultaneously, to be honest with you, but they haven't gone there.
Also known for their, should I say, risque advertising.
Yes, it sounds like a fun company. I mean, their logo is the big thumbs up.
Yeah.
I just went there and it just warmed my heart, man. I'm going, yeah, you know what? They got my back, that company. They're so fun.
Nice.
But I like them. But, I asked them, are you coming to Canada? And they said, well, we only have a Tier 3 engine. So, no.
Well, we stopped at JCB today. They don't have sprayers, but they were talking about how in a lot of the stuff they're showcasing here, they're talking, they're Tier 5 compliant.
Yeah.
It's just, it's so bizarre when you come to a global show like this to see the different emission standards that even just, down to the motors, what people are dealing with.
Yeah, and obviously there's a lot of different countries here, right? And what's interesting about being in the Canadian pavilion, for example, is there's equipment here that will never conform to the European transport width standards. But the Canadians are here to meet Russians.
Yeah.
So this is just a conduit. This show.
Yeah, some of the drills that are coming over here from Canada, they're not getting down to 3 meters wide.
No.
Okay, so any other the John Deere Future, what do they call it? The Farmer Future Zone, or Farming Future Zone.
Yeah.
They had a robotic sprayer. They had a drone sprayer, the Volo drone. What was your impression of those?
I think they were attention-getting, to be quite honest. I don't think that they're there. I mean, they made that circle just to kind of say, hey, look, we're future-looking, we're a technology company, we're innovative, that kind of a thing. But I did run into an old, acquaintance of mine, Jorge Hero, who is the owner of Blue River.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he started Blue River, and they were acquired by John Deere for $300 million a few years ago. And I said, Jorge, I never expected to see you here. How are you? And he said, I'm fine. And I asked him about what he's doing now, how his company, because we haven't heard much about them since they were acquired. No. And he said, well, we've moved away from doing the custom lettuce thinning spraying that we got started on. And we have moved away from the linear nozzle that is very specific on any weed, and they've moved to a fan nozzle. And the other thing that they've done is also very interesting. They've decided that rather than try to identify every weed that they see in their camera, that they would ignore the weeds and that they would focus on identifying the crop incredibly accurately. And so the concept is, this is in rows and this is corn, and the corn looks like this, and we're darn sure it looks like this. And if it doesn't look like this, then it's probably not corn, and therefore we will activate the nozzle.
And a lot of work being done on the sensor side, right?
Yeah.
Everybody trying, and whether that's through tillage or through spraying. And it seems like with the area of robotics and autonomy, some of that is kind of converging on it. We had the Dino robot here, where basically it's a 4-shank robot where it's doing interplant and interrow. There's a lot of ways going forward to get rid of weeds.
There is. I mean, in my world, it's the detection that really is topical right now. So, Amazon, for example, has the AMA Spot, which is really weeded licensed, and they have the Eastern European market for that. They also are the platform on which the Zarvio Bosch Smart Sprayer is being mounted and worked with, and it'll be introduced in 2021. So that is a camera, a color camera. We all know it, and it's got lights. And so they're also, by the way, doing what Blue River is doing. They're identifying the crop with great certainty and saying, well, everything else must be a weed. Yeah. They don't care about what species the weed is because the tank mix actually takes care of that. But, it's going to be an incremental approach. What they're finding is that when you speak to these people, they're saying, we're hitting a bit of a threshold that we can't cross. It's about 80% accuracy, which is a technological marvel if you think about how they're doing it, but it's not acceptable for our customers. It's not acceptable for farmers. They say 80% control, come on, I'll have to respray with a broadcast boom if that happens to me, so why would I do that? No, it's got to be 95% or better in many cases. So that's how they can actually achieve that right away. So it's actually a clever approach. I like it. But, it's going to be incremental. They're coming into row crops with very distinct identifiable plants, and they'll go into narrow row spacings as they get better. So we won't see this tomorrow like we thought we might. So that was actually kind of interesting. And everybody has one. So Bilberry is the French version of the camera AI, and Excel Group, Hardy, Agrifac, Berthoud, and Apache, for example. they have an agreement with Bilberry, and they're doing it. And then I went to Daman and said, well, we also have an agreement with Bilberry. Daman has a Bilberry camera on their sprayer. And then I went to Kuhn, and they have an agreement with Carbon Bee, another French company that is doing the same thing. I'm going, wow. And then I met with my Green Eye people from Israel. They don't have a booth, but they were talking to some OEMs and other things, trying to get that started. And that's the same concept as well. And I'm going, wow, that's actually already a fairly crowded place. So if you think about OEMs, most of the major OEMs are married to a camera system already, or at least they have a relationship.
And that's the part externally that a lot of times we don't see at the farm gate, but it's like in the background, especially at a show like this, those chess pieces are aligning and people finding the right partner, making sure they have the right partner going forward. And some are going to pick the right one, and some will pick the one maybe not exactly. We could have done a bit better, but it's hindsight. But it definitely is very interesting.
Oh, and and the thing is that the scale of the machines. My God, you said these large sprayers. I mean, these are bigger sprayers than we see in North America. Yeah. They're monsters and they're heavy. Yeah. And I'm saying, what about compaction? And, these are issues, but they, of course, use tillage to, ameliorate it, I suppose. But, we got Susi Tracks here, Nick and his company that he works for. That's an answer, but I don't see a lot of tracked machines here. I see wheels.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
It was interesting, speaking of larger sprayers here, we went to a booth today, I can't remember which one it was, and we said, well, this one must be for North, we're from Canada, the US, big sprayer. He's like, no, that Eastern Europe, this Canadian one over here is smaller. With this one we're selling, that's the one we're going to move into Canada. Yeah. So it's interesting.
And so Horsch will probably come to Canada eventually.
They're going to test in next summer and release in 21.
And Amazon, as you know, is already there. They brought the first Pantera into Saskatchewan. It's currently in Swift Current. And these are very sophisticated sprayers. I mean, they are so welcome. They have superior boom design, level, maintenance of height, a prerequisite really for all of our future camera work that we might do, and certainly good for drift and other things. They have superior tanks and plumbing designs. They have some quirky things. Like, for example, most of them have these diaphragm pumps. They're a little bit, they can pulsate. They have a high power draw. They're heavy. But there is one I saw today that is the Challenger, the Fendt Challenger. It's a Rogator, but now it's marketed under the Fendt banner in Europe since a year or two ago. That has a centrifugal pump. It's the only one. As far as I know, it might be some other. But I said, well, why don't you have the traditional European diaphragm pump? And they said, because it's heavy, it's expensive, it pulsates possibly, and the centrifugal pump doesn't have that. And I said, well, but the centrifugal pump can't run dry, and it can get an airlock in it, and then you can't pump with it anymore until you do a whole bunch of levers and valve switches. And they said, well, we solved that problem. I said, how'd you solve it? And they said, well, we actually have a reservoir of water that when when the tank is dry, and it actually recirculates water in the pump and maintains a prime. And then when we fill the tank up, it just continuously has purged air, and it can actually suck water from unlike any other centrifugal pump. It behaves like a diaphragm pump. And they like it. They like diaphragm pumps as I do, because they're light, they're inexpensive, and they're productive.
Always innovation. It's crazy. Yeah. Hey, Tom, thanks a lot. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thanks. And when are you going home?
Saturday.
I couldn't last that long. 3 days. I'm exhausted.
We're at the end of day 4. We got one more to go. One more. So, hey, are you coming back though? Will this be the first and last, or are you going to come back?
This was a positive experience for me. First of all, what a shot in the arm in terms of the confidence that manufacturers are expressing for ag. They're here, they think ag is productive, they think ag is profitable, and they want a piece of the pie. I mean, I think that's a positive for our industry. A lot of optimism here. There's 500,000 people come through here from all around the world, and there's 2,800 exhibitors. I mean, that's mind-blowing. I think it's such a worthwhile experience to see this. It broadens your scope. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, and if you didn't come, which a lot of you didn't, you can find all of our coverage at RealAgriculture.com. Please check it out. Okay, Tom, safe travels home.
You too.